Lynn Marie Houston, poet, educator, and technical writer for the U.S. Army. In the poetry I'm writing lately, I'm writing a lot about my father's service in Vietnam and growing up in the aftermath of that war. My father was drafted a month after he graduated from college and married my mom, and he served in Vietnam from about 1970 to 71. I was conceived when he was home on leave, and he came home just a few months before my birth. When he went to apply for teaching jobs after that, he actually left his service off his resume because he was afraid that that might count against him. So the poem I'm reading to you today from is about my experience of reading a folder of his letters that he gave to me just a few years ago. They were letters he wrote home to his mother and father while he was in the jungles, in the camps, and at the forward operating bases in Vietnam. And this was published in the journal called War, Literature, and the Arts, which is published out of the Air Force Academy in Colorado. This was a particular issue based around the theme of home. So this is a poem I've written called "My Father Sends Me a Card That Says, You Are So Loved." By the time he had been in country 6 months, my father stopped calling them helicopters, referred to them instead as birds. "Yesterday, I flew out on a bird with the captain," one of his letters reads. Stateside, my father rode the blade and wing of war into our living room. Once, when we played hide and seek, I lost him somewhere in the house. When I finally called out, he emerged from the place I'd looked first. "A little trick I learned in Vietnam," he said. "You hide where the enemy has already searched." But I didn't want to play the enemy. I wore his camouflage shirts into the woods, tails tied in a knot around my waist, cuffs rolled, the head of an eagle drooping near my elbow. I spoke to him over an imaginary radio. "Got your 6, how copy?" I sighted targets with a bent thumb behind a rigid pointed finger. Is it true that we can only love what we fully understand? Roger that, I read you loud and clear. On his first Christmas after being drafted, my father writes, "I have adjusted from being a civilian and have accepted that I am in Vietnam and will do my best, even though it hardly seems possible." The Army spent months training him to become a soldier in an air mobile unit. He learned to fire an M60, rappel from 50 feet off the ground, and set up a perimeter with trip flares. But no one ever trained him to become a civilian again. I've scoured my father's scrapbook of photos, read and reread his letters, but I've failed to understand what it means to have been born in the shadow of this war, what it means to be loved by a man who still calls a helicopter a bird, who still opens a trunk of green fatigues and stares, jaw hardening, into a box full of medals.